Welcome to the third installment of my sit down with Luyanda Jafta, the CEO and one of the founders, or the main founder of the People's Fund, celebrating 6 years. This was meant to be one episode, and here we are now. And I'm really, really hoping, and I'm going to try and keep as quiet as possible, that this is going to be the last of the installment. And I'm going to let Luyanda, this is literally, like I have to put this disclaimer up front, this is going to be a very tragic, heavy PR episode on the People's Fund, getting all of us to kind of like be obsessed and think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Love it.
But Luyanda has to sell you guys the whatever he's selling. Luyanda, how you doing, bro?
I'm good. So funding shell namhlanje.
Today, melu shell aggressively like nginkani. What's that last jole? Sir, please, it's your time. I'd like you to cover the most important aspects we never covered in the first two episodes, because we spoke about the journey of the People's Fund, where it came from, how it's grown from the crowdfunding to the purchase orders to what it's become now.
Yeah.
So I want us to almost assume this is our first episode and you're introducing the People's Fund as a company today. We've been alive for 6 years. This is what we do. And this is more than anything why we're having this sit down now, to celebrate and most importantly to get people to come in and then get involved in the company.
Got you. Thanks, Pen. So quick introduction. Like you mentioned, I'm Luyanda Jafta, co-founder and CEO of the People's Fund, right? And what is the People's Fund? The People's Fund is basically a purchase order funding company, right? That crowdfunds its capital. Fancy English that. Let's break it down.
Sure.
Right? Purchase order funding is this, right? Like, so if you get a contract from corporate or government to deliver tissue, ne?
Yeah.
Wants to deliver tissues to corporate or government says, listen, ngicela tissue for 200,000 rand, but I'll pay you after 30 days after delivery, right? Tsepa gana factory, systemic apartheid. Tsepa gana factory, agana capital, right? So Tsepa needs a supplier to provide this. I go umpit at Mamela, I'll give you the stuff at 100,000 rand, right? At a cost price of 100,000. Tsepa gana 100,000. Magayagu bank can't get funding, right? Because Tsepa can't get funding from the bank because of the National Credit Act and how it's structured, it comes to us. When it comes to us, what we do is we go to the supplier, buy the goods, get them delivered to the end client, and then charge Tsepa a fee or a profit share, right, of the actual transaction. So we've been doing that for 6 years. Typically, we charge them 6% of the value of the order.
6%?
Yeah, of the value
of the total order.
Yeah, so in this example that we've used now, where the order's worth 200,000 and he needs 100,000, we charge them 12,000, and they'd be left with 88,000. We'd get back our 100,000 in capital and charge them 12,000 rand.
How do you guys decide that a purchase order is valid? Is it any contract? Must it have a government stamp? Does it have to come from a big corporate?
So we run that process quite internally. So if you have a purchase order, bring it, right? Any government department, any corporate, and any of those things.
If I draft a contract and I give it to Usia, would you guys not vet? Or are there is there a list of companies and government agencies you're willing to work with?
So we do have a preferred customer list that we've got on the website, but we're open to anyone, right? What we do like you were asking, we do a vetting process, right? And evaluate, can we fund this person or not? You know what I mean? And in that vetting and evaluation process, what we're trying to do is establish if this customer is big enough and can be backed. So generally, the very small guys we would not touch.
Okay. What's very small? Do you have like a threshold, or is it something that's fluid and flexible currently?
It's fluid and flexible in the sense that Upenyo Magati Zokayusia he contract
for 50,000. I need him to deliver something for my small business, but I haven't been around for long.
So the dilemma would not be the amount, like the 50,000 we'd fund for any other client, right? But because we can't vet you on your scale and your size, right?
Yeah.
We generally prefer your end client to either be listed or a known corporate, right?
Okay.
Or be government. Do you know what I mean? So, because
no, I can understand.
Our whole premise is built on the idea that the security and collateral for the actual transaction is the strength of your end client, right? Not the entrepreneur. And that's what we've created.
I'm gonna off ramp, and I apologize because I said I wouldn't do this. The People's Fund came in to fill in a gap that was not being serviced.
Yeah.
So it looks like there's a new gap now.
Yeah.
And I just want to ask you, do you think currently maybe for your business model it's not worthwhile?
Yeah.
It's the reason we have Zamazamas. certain mining operations are not worth big mines coming in. Do you think you guys would consider looking into something like that for future? Going back
100%.
to crowdfunding, these are small companies. Let's get a little bit of money to play around in the space and then maybe charge higher than 6%.
100%. So one of them, and then there's people we've looked at those opportunities, right? But with any business, you want to focus on the thing you're doing right now and own and dominate that part of the market, then look at other things. I'll give you an example. There was a conversation we were entertaining, we didn't see it through, with one of those escrow platforms, right? Basically, I'll describe it in detail, the escrow platform. But people wanted to fit solar panels on their houses, right? That's usually a 200,000 transaction, give or take, right? But they didn't want to pay the supplier until the job was done, right?
Okay.
But the supplier needed capital to execute on the job.
Correct.
So on the escrow platform, what they do is they put the money to confirm to the supplier that the thing is going to be done.
Yeah.
And then what we were going to come in and do is provide the capital so that the supplier can execute, and then we'd share in whatever the profits were. Right?
Escrow doesn't release the money.
Escrow doesn't release
They
the money
hold it
until the transaction is done.
Okay, but the supplier still needs
The
money.
cash.
Fair enough.
Right? So,
Okay.
so those sort of transactions, we were looking at doing something like that, and we will definitely in future.
Okay.
But for now, there's enough of a gap in what we're operating in to execute on.
Do you still believe in crowdfunding?
150 million%.
Okay.
200 million%. 200 million. That's how much I believe in crowdfunding, right?
Is that how much you guys are making?
That's how much we're raising, right?
Jeez.
We're 6 years old, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
And turning 6 years old, one of the things we did, we looked at the business model, looked at the whole entire execution of what we're doing, and we wanted the company to go back to what it was, right? From the beginning, a crowdfunding platform. When we did the purchase order funding, right, we got quite cozy with private investors, right? People who've got big capital, right? As well as institutional investors, right?
Did you sell out a little bit?
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
Oh, definitely.
Please own it.
Oh, yeah.
And
no,
now you want to
definitely.
go back to the people.
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
The sellout, and I think the sellout was absolutely necessary, you
Sure.
know, especially because what the platform needed. We needed big chunks of capital, right? And now that it's very clear that this works, you know, the big providers of capital actually gave us the opportunity to figure out how it's supposed to work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we did that quite successfully. Now we feel comfortable to bring it out into the general public, you know, because you know that the big difference between big capital and me as a member of the public, right? Maybe there's 2 or 3 main differences, right? One, big capital is going to suss out the opportunity and also understand what the risks are, right? And then if things mess out, right, generally speaking, almost swore. I've not been swearing for so long. I'm so proud of myself.
We're really proud of you. Well done, Luyanda boy. Well done.
One of the things is that big capital, we can have a conversation. They're not going to be happy, right? But they understand the risks that they signed up for, right? Individuals generally don't understand the risk they're signing up for.
Correct.
You know, and that's part of why people get scammed a lot of times. You know, like about WhatsApp stock fell and all of that stuff. So what we said was, listen, we think we've built this platform to a place where now people can understand what we're doing, and we're going to build it out, right, with the general markets. You know, capital is going to participate because they're almost inescapable, right, like big capital. But what we want to do is transition out of big capital into individuals.
Transition out, not have both. It almost seems like you're saying in time, we don't want big capital.
In time, what we want to do is get to a point where the platform is completely owned by the people, you know. It works, man. Like, you know why it works, man? It works because then the people can own the solutions to the economy, you know. In the previous 2 episodes, one of them we were discussing the PR and the lack of black participation in tendering, right?
Sure.
And the lack of accountability of government, right? In that process. Like, I'd love to own a company that actually does that and says, I'm going to hold government accountable and I'm going to make you a bit of money. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And I'm going to alter the employment status of South Africa by training somebody how to tender and also provide capital for black businesses. You know, like like when we think about it, we think of it like Imbaul, you know, like, you know, like Imbaul, the one as a strategy, you know,
Sure.
we call it bomb
It's
fire.
it's a can with holes on the
With
side
holes on- yeah,
to make a fire.
you make a fire, and what happens is we all gather around it, right? Like a communal one, right? And as we gather around it, everyone's having their own piece of conversations in and around it, right? But then what ends up happening is, like in unison, it's almost like we're being moved by like the Holy Spirit, right? Each person does something like to keep the fire going, right?
Yeah.
Somebody will let in kuni, somebody is fetching paper,
Yeah.
and but like life goes on while that is happening,
Yeah.
right? And from our perspective, that's what we want the People's Fund to be: is that we as a communal people, right? Generally, as Black people, as a communal people, we want to create an environment where you as umama wasekhaya, you can come in 1,000 rand yakho, and you know you're contributing to umama banbani getting trained, umntana banbani getting trained in how to tender, and at the same time umntana banbani getting trained how what's the word I'm looking for, or rather getting funded.
Sure.
You know,
Because the training is once you say, I was like, so you guys are doing training as well. You just mean they're in the game and they're
Yes.
learning how to be in the game.
100%. They're learning how to tender.
And you guys are helping with the funding
100%.
for that.
Khona lo muntu lo ngifonela, yazi, and ungifonela into engapheli. I think ususele watch.
Sorry.
Uyangiphazamisa.
Please go for it.
Sure. And what we're trying to do, right, more than anything, is enable those people to participate in the bowl, you know,
Sure.
letting kunizak, so that we all keep warm from this. Because, you know, like, I know most of us are worried about the idea and notion of youth unemployment, lack of access to opportunities, right? And we think we've got a little bit of a niche that we've figured out that can actually solve part of that problem.
You remind me of Bushfire in Eswatini. It happens to be sponsored by MTN, which I think sponsors the studio that we're in now.
Got you.
Their tagline is "Bring your fire," because they have an amazing music camping festival.
Yeah.
And they're like, without you guys bringing your energy, your excitement, your vibes, your phones to capture content, we have nothing here. So you're almost saying the People's Fund, same tagline, bring your fire and let's build something special together. 100%.
Our tagline is actually Vuguba ugeza ubangene sokap, right? So it's you who do this, right? We're just a conduit that enables that to happen, you know? And when we say we're a conduit, like, we mean it truly. I think all of us are very conscious of a potential collapse or even revolution of the South African economy, right?
A collapse or a revolution?
An unled revolution, right?
Okay.
From a South African economy perspective, because, man, things are not great, you know? And what we can do is whine about our politicians, right?
Correct.
And we can do that all day long, right? Or we could be part of what we feel like is the solution, right? Because all of us generally feel powerless in solving this problem, like corruption, right? We all feel generally powerless. And what we're saying is there's an avenue for that to be solved. And in that avenue, you could transform the life of someone who was unemployed, right? First and foremost. Secondly, you can provide capital for Black-owned businesses, right? And thirdly, if we do this properly, we grow the business and the value of your share will grow. You know what I mean? So we're saying social good does not have to be a handout. It can be sustainable in its own profitability.
Are you guys going to be working with government for this initiative, or is it still completely private?
So it's mostly private. I mean, when I say working with government, like, think about it this way. We've got capital that we've gotten from the likes of CIFA, right?
Okay.
They've provided capital. That's one of the institutions that have provided capital to us, right?
Sure.
We're willing to work with anyone who's willing to work, right? So we're not going to exclude government from this process, right? But what our primary objective and primary focus is the people, you know?
Would you consider being Minister of Small Enterprises for government and trying to bring the People's Fund almost and have it work in government with all that money there?
I hear what you're describing. I'll remind you of the thing we said in the first convo, right? Where you were talking about stokvels, and you're like, man, I think I should have been part of the People's Fund potentially, right? But then now I've gone a different route, right? And you've built a platform, which is the Black Pen, right? Which is, it's huge, right?
Okay. Thank you, by the way. I don't think it's huge, but thank you.
In the same way, I think I play my best role where I am right now,
Okay.
right? As participant, as leader of the for-profit enterprises, right? Not also a friend of bureaucracy and rules, so
I hear you.
I'm going to struggle in that environment, you know. But I think as things stand right now, I'm playing the best role I think I could play at this present moment. In future, maybe, I don't know.
You sat with big institutions.
Yeah.
Called it sandboxing, where they were
Yeah.
trying to figure out what you guys are doing. Is part of your vision to try and change the National Credit Act?
Yeah.
Is part of your vision to try and influence, if it's not you, then people in government, to be like, if you guys are doing small businesses, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
We can influence you. You guys can support us, but we are going to be advisors. Is that part of your mission? Or are you like, look, those guys must do what they do and we're going to do our own thing?
Yeah. So interestingly, we're going to push them in that direction in whatever way, right? To the thing you're describing, because bureaucracy gets a lot of things wrong. They create policies from top down,
Correct.
not bottom up, right? So do we want to change the National Credit Act? Yes, right? That's the first thing. Secondly, the People's Fund, we just got our certificate as a public company like 2 weeks ago, right? So we're a public unlisted company, right? And we're raising 200 million.
Congrats, by the way.
Thank you. We've raised 30 million already.
Because that's probably a conversation on its own.
That's
how do you take an ordinary company, turn it into, because we have private companies, PTY Ltd,
Yep.
and you're now a public company,
public,
just not listed yet.
not listed.
Okay.
And basically what we're intending to do, the intention of this entire 200 million raise, right, is to do it successfully, right? So that other entrepreneurs in the market also go, man, if I want to build a business, I don't have to sit at the behest of Mr. Banban and Mr. Banban and Mr. Banban, right?
Yeah.
Who run an organization that holds all of the capital. I don't have to wait for this gatekeeper.
Yeah.
I could go to the people who are my customers and say, listen, guys, do you want to own this thing? So when we're raising this 200 million, we're lucky we've already raised 30 million of it, right?
Congrats.
We're selling 67% of our company. Each person can contribute from as little as 1,000 rand, right?
Yeah.
They're gonna own a share in the company, right? And they are going to own a share, and they're going to get the quarterly reports, right? I'll be giving the CEO speech, obviously, in that quarter with my fellow directors.
Warren Buffett.
Right? But they'll own this and they'll know what's happening, and they'll have reports that basically tell them how we're building this out together, right? We've got dreams and objectives of how we're going to grow the value of those shares, right, over the next 6 years, right, by 40% year on year.
Jeez,
right?
that's crazy.
That's aggressive, but what we want to do, that's our objectives, right?
Yeah.
Of course, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face, right?
Thank you, Mike Tyson.
Thank you, Mike. So, but more than anything, we want to say, man, listen, there was one, I keep thinking of the story, one of the founders of Apple, right, that people forget, right? There was Steve, and there was Steve and Steve.
Yeah.
Then there was the third, I forget his name, right?
Yeah.
Top of mind now. He owned 10% of the company, and he was the tiebreaker whenever they needed to vote. He was so exhausted working.
Kingmaker.
He was so exhausted
EFF.
working with Steve and Steve,
Yeah.
like trying to split the decisions between them, that he sold his shares for like a minuscule amount, or like something like $100,000, right? And then if you were to compare the shares value now, I think you're talking in the billions,
Yeah.
right? And generally our feeling as the People's Fund, because the thing we're building, we think it's quite sizable.
Yeah.
We think it's how you change economies. When I think of it as something that gets to your question earlier, that gets implemented by the African Union for trade finance across the continent, right?
Jeez.
And the African bank ends up buying it and saying, listen, we're going to take it off the stock exchange, we're going to buy this and use it as our means to execute on our political objectives of a free trade agreement, right? That's the vision of the People's Fund, is that we want to have $1 in almost every transaction that happens on the continent, right? And we want you to be part of the early stages of that, because we're only 6 years old, and as you join that journey, from as little as 1,000 rand, we build this thing together,
It sounds like it's long term. You want people that are going to invest, not to flip, not for dividends, but to be like, look, we're going to be the next Apple.
Yeah.
A lot of these BEE transaction shares have lock-in periods.
Yeah.
Are you guys looking to do something similar, that if you buy a share, you can't sell it for the next however many years? Or is it different?
So it's slightly similar but different, right? So if you buy, it's slightly similar but different.
Critical but stable.
But stable. So if you buy a share today, anytime from now until end of February, you can't sell it. End of February 2024, right?
Can't sell it at all.
Can't sell it at all.
At all.
At all. You have to hold it.
Ever.
No, until No. Until February 2024.
Or if you buy it today,
Today,
it's locked in till Feb
Feb
2024. Okay, I hear
right?
you.
As we do the initial raise, right? And then post that, you can trade it freely, right?
Okay.
We're going to be putting it on one of the alternative platforms. We're talking to a few, some of the popular ones, to figure out where we'll place our shares to trade. But it's exciting times, right? So, but long term, we're looking for somebody who's looking at least a 6-year horizon, right?
How do you speak to the people? So we're speaking about a public unlisted company.
Yeah.
We speak about lock-in periods.
Yeah.
We're speaking about if you buy today, you're locked in till February 2024. You speak about alternative platforms, stock exchanges, whatever
Yeah.
the case may be. This now is for educated kids.
Yeah.
And the People's Fund is meant to be for ukoko,
Yeah.
for umkhulu, for auntie, elokishini, in an informal settlement, someone ogerezayo that just has saved some money. How are you guys planning to roll out and get them involved?
100%. So I think to the analogy we were using earlier, yembawula say mamela yakhumbula lama share schemes lawo MTN, right? And yakhumbula bewasebenza kanjani, they had a long-term outlook. Ne? We want to do a similar thing. But the thing you have to know is that a company that helps the people that look like you and I, the benefit is not only on the share ownership, it's also in what the company is actually doing. And more importantly, I think, because when we ran the People's Stockfell, what are the things we noticed? We made it for the people, right? We said Nitlipacho. But what we attracted, because we were on digital platforms, where you were talking, you described it, I'm going to use that word. We attracted clever blacks, right? And what they do, right, in their microcosm, right, is they say, listen, this is the thing that I'm part of, and I want you to come join. And then they explain it in layman's terms to their immediate families so that we're all sharing in
You're hoping for word of mouth.
Yeah.
You're hoping to go clever black.
Yeah.
And then clever black goes home to speak to their family and be like, hey, koko mina ngene kule nto.
Brand advocacy.
Okay.
We're pushing for brand advocacy. The entrepreneurs we fund, right? The entrepreneurs we fund generally abantu bakhulilekazi njengami, and they want the basics, right? I don't have net asset value. I don't have all of those things. I just want to get funded, right? They are going to be, every entrepreneur we fund is going to be a shareholder of the People's Fund.
Okay.
Right?
That's going to be a requirement.
It's going to be a requirement, right? So basically, how we structured it is similar to what we did with the Stockfell, and that's how the Stockfell grew. Is that we said we're going to say everyone we fund, we say, listen, there's 1,000 rand that's going to go into your invoice, right?
Sure.
That 1,000 rand is a share, the People's Fund. It's only due when you get paid. You know what I mean? So in the same way, every entrepreneur is going to be a shareholder. So they're going to be a shareholder in the company that funds them. Izandla ziyakezana type thing.
Obviously, there's confidentiality concerns. The idea of telling the stories of the entrepreneurs that you fund as part of your business and growth strategy, almost every month being like, this month we funded Utabo this much. Utabo comes from Ewadville and he's raised this much, and you don't have to mention the details, but he's going to be working with government. Next month, Usbongile got funded with 50,000 rand. She comes from Mamelodi. Her mom is a school teacher, and maybe even get testimonials to act also as the clever blacks, and people being like, hey, it's like, guys, I'm part of this thing. And I also just want to say thank you to all of you that are part of this thing, because we're getting to do work collectively.
100%. That's actually a great idea. We used to do that, like quite a lot, right? Because when we are raising capital, people want to see tangible stories. They don't want to hear numbers,
Sure.
right? So that's definitely going to have to be incorporated, right? Especially for abo mama betu, to say, hey man, I'm part of something, bigger than myself. I mean, a fair amount of the various B shares, some did really well, some did so. But the nice thing is it introduced abantu bagiti to share buying, and we want to do the same thing to say, man, we can complain about the lack of capital and access to capital for black people in the South African economy, or we could do something about it. Like
there's no invisible third hand behind the People's Fund. We're gonna find out later that George Soros and Cyril's funders were actually involved, and you were just the face, and it was all fun and games. But this was actually an old mutual Sanlam momentum initiative, and we just didn't know.
The only third hand is God, it's the primary hand. No, so there is no third hand. On some days, I wish I took a third hand. It would make it so much easier. Like, it would make it so much easier, you know? But it wouldn't make it easier for my personality. My personality and yours are not too far apart. You know, there's this fire that burns, right?
Sure.
And there's that fire that burns for freedom, that burns for like release, right? Like breaking out of something, right? And one of the things the TPF does like extremely well is break the rules,
Yeah.
you know. But like righteous indignation break the rules, you know. So we struggle with people who are come from a structured background,
Sure.
you know. They struggle with us. Did I tell you we've been kicked so many times out of like office parks because or office spaces because we're loud?
Really?
Yeah. So
It makes sense. Let me not even say really. It makes sense.
yeah. So
It's sad, but you know, this is Africa, but business is not African.
no. So the one of the complaints we once got is, why are they always so happy? You know? And I was like, man, like working, like even how we conform as black people to the to white environments, which can be cold and bland
Yeah.
sometimes, right? Is we also diminish ourselves, right? So that we're not loud, we're not
Yeah.
present. We're loud, we're loud. I'm the oldest person in the company. You can imagine how loud we are. And it's an all black staff complement, you know. From the all operationally. I mean, even in the board, we have one white participant, and then we do have a white shareholder, right?
Yeah.
But outside of that, the whole company is mostly black.
How do you limit your... Sorry. Here's our swimmer. How do you guys limit yourselves from a takeover? So you're saying you're selling 67% of your company.
Yeah.
You've raised 30 million. There's another 170 million out.
Yeah.
There's a big corporate, big money that's listening to the story. They're like, oh, look, we'll take up the rest. Don't worry about advertising to the people. It's chilled. We'll give you the money. Let's carry on working.
Yeah. So there's two parts to that, right? One, it's the structure of even the shares we're selling, right?
Okay.
So there's generally two kinds of shares in any company. There's ordinary shares and preference shares, right? Ordinary shares is got full rights of the company, right? So most people don't know that shareholders elect the board that actually represents the interest of the shareholders and the interest of the company, but first and foremost before the interest of the shareholders.
Yeah.
So what we've done is we've made the shares, and then there's preference shares, right?
Yeah.
Which have far less voting rights, right? But still have things like coupons and various other incentives, right?
Okay.
So how we've structured the shares to make it easy is two parts. One, we gave ourselves share options, right? And what do share options means? It means based on the performance of the company, we'll earn shares, right?
Okay.
As the original shareholders. Now, to control for that, that earnings, right? We wanted to control the board. So we made the other shares preference shares. So they can't vote in a board and all of those things, right? For the first 6 years.
This is the 67%.
This is the 67.
Everyone who's coming in won't be able to pick the board.
Yeah.
Or change the board. They can't fire you.
They can't fire
I'm
us.
like, hey, Bob, I'm going to buy shares. I'm fucking tired of Luyanda's face. This guy must go.
But that's only for the first 6 years, so
Okay.
that we could realize our options.
Okay.
Then post that, they'll convert into full
Ordinary shares.
Yeah, that's the first layer.
Okay.
Then secondly, we do have the right of refusal for anyone coming in. We're trying to limit everyone to not more than 5% of the share.
Okay, so there's currently almost a cap.
Yeah,
You can't have more than 5%.
5%. Like if you're pushing beyond 5%, we're trying to manage it, right?
Okay.
There are structures we're putting in place so that the capital is guaranteed, but then people end up buying like a couponing from a big corporate or that sort of thing, right? Without that corporate having any sort of control, right? Where like think of it like this. Think of I won't mention anyone by name just yet, right? Think of them having a CSI or whatever spent, right?
Okay.
Of 200 million, right? And saying, listen, we want to put it up, right? And what you're going to do is you're going to allow people to take on the coupons, right? Because you're raising 200 million. That's what you need as the People's Fund. We'll provide that 200 million. Then people are going to be buying back shares from us, and we won't limit them from that, so that you guarantee the capital while we continue executing.
After the 6 years have lapsed, and maybe your share options have vested and everything's happened, how do you guys protect yourselves from a full takeover where another company is like, this thing, if you guys hit the 40% per year, this thing is bumping. We're a big corporate. We want to come and buy you. We've got, let's say it's grown from 200 million to 600 million. We'd like to buy you guys out.
Yeah. So I don't know, Penuel. I don't want to predict the future too much, right?
Yeah.
There's an intentionality that exists, right, with the People's Fund to break things, man, break things that are not working, right? I don't know how we'll prevent it at that 6-year point, right?
Yeah.
Because we will also have a fiduciary duty to our shareholders, right? If like somebody comes with an offer and we're like, man, we're never going to make you this much money. We
Sure.
believe in what we believe in, but we'll never make you the money that these people are offering, right?
Yeah.
We'll have a fiduciary duty to declare it to our shareholders,
Yeah.
right? Our hope, I say this like very loosely, our hope is that post the 6 years, we've embedded the foundation and the culture of the company so well, right, that it lasts for another 10 to 15 years in its same vein.
Yeah.
Like they mentioned in Good to Great, right? A great book by Phil Collins, where they did research on great companies, is that you measure a good leader on how well he leads a company while he's in it, measure a great leader on how well the company is led after he leaves, right?
Okay.
So hopefully in that 6 years we create such a strong succession plan and execution that it doesn't, the culture itself will drive where the company goes, no matter who offers whatever, because I'm not going to run this thing forever, you know what I mean?
I was going to ask, the People's Fund seems like it's your life now. Do you have another part of your life? Are you looking to exit at some point into other things?
Yo, I'm an entrepreneur. I've got so many things that are just sitting there in the back of my head going, I want to do this. I want to be in energy so badly, right? Like
Okay.
renewable energy so badly. That's big for me. I dream about it.
So I can imagine anyone that's coming to look for funding, something to do with renewables, you're going to be there punting for them. It's like, say, give this guy money. I want us to sit with him. I want to befriend this guy.
Probably. But like that sits on me like quite heavily, like on my heart, right?
Yeah.
To get into the I've got this dream of infinite excess energy, right? Think of it like this, like like with solar,
Yeah.
because of the sun, there's nothing you have to replenish. You just need to get the solar panels into the sun.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It's not absolutely infinite, but it's close to, right?
Okay.
Or use infinite. Think of it like this. There's this material I wanted to import like 6 years ago, right? It's basically like a film. And it's, what do they call it? Let's call it thermodynamic, right?
Yeah.
But basically, you know how a fridge works? It uses electricity to turn the temperature cold.
Okay.
What this does is the reverse. It takes the temperature differential between things, right? And it converts that into electricity. So you have a hot and a cold place, right? And that material, it was developed by MIT. That material, you could put it on cell phone covers, right? So that somebody never has to charge again. Like now it becomes a cell phone case, right? Where somebody's got a charger and that charger is their own body.
This is something that currently exists.
Yeah, it currently exists.
So anyone who's not sleeping like you must get moving.
I'm sleeping badly, must get moving. It's existed for almost 10 years, the material. I even know the guys who had the patent. I emailed them. We were in talks, but then it became imperative to start the People's Fund.
Okay.
But that's one of the things I look at. I did an analysis of Soweto as an example. And in that analysis, like looking at the sun hours we have, the best material you have of solar panels. Like we've got an asset sitting in Soweto that nobody is realizing. It's so big. It's the roofs of the South African, of Soweto's environment, right?
Yeah.
I even wrote about it on Facebook, hoping somebody would start it, right?
Yeah.
But basically, with the sun hours that we have in Johannesburg, like basically how much the sun hits and the roof space you have in South Africa and the number of houses you have, right? You could basically run Soweto completely off grid and they could start selling electricity back into the grid. So you could finance the whole operation of what they sell back into Eskom, So we'd stop complaining as a country about Soweto, who have very little to do with why they don't pay the electricity, and it has to do with the structural way in which the electricity grids were built by the apartheid government, right? So yeah, those are some of the things that like keep me awake at night, right?
Sure.
But the thing is, you need a lot of minds operating on that. And when you've got a country with 60% poverty rate and people are hungry, we can't do the next step. Like, let's get each other fed. And that's why the People's Fund becomes the first step.
Thank you. Any closing remarks from you?
Gotcha.
And this is now outside of the People's Fund, almost going back to when you started this thing. Crowdfunding, getting the people involved, the state of the nation, the state of the mindsets of Black people.
Yeah.
How some people now are not even calling for democracy. So it's like, don't give people shares. All they want are actually jobs. Build this thing, make money for yourself, and just hire them. That's all. Like, Just your thoughts on the company that you've built, the 6 years, and the state of the nation, bro.
Got
Just
you.
you personally outside of the company.
Got you. So to close out the company part, I'll just say if anyone's interested in the shares, they can go to the website on thepeople.co.za. That's thepeople.co.za.
I'm definitely going to drop the link in the description and in the
Awesome.
comments here.
I spelled that wrong. I was in a talk with a very beautiful woman. She was so distracting. She's gonna hear this and she's gonna laugh. She was so distracting, but she's an interviewer. I said the wrong link. I forgot the E, but nobody
Did you try to
noticed.
spell it out?
Yeah, I spelled it out.
Oh, this guy.
But I was looking straight at her. I was like, "Yo, this woman is gorgeous." But yeah, that's the first stage.
So sorry for people that are watching. We're gonna drop a link in the description, in the comments. Anyone that's interested, probably on my social media platforms as well. For anyone that's interested in getting involved in the People's Fund, outside of the 1,000 rand, just the whole story, the idea of democratizing capitalism and the economy and getting people involved in different ways. And as you've seen, Luyanda is literally about freeing people and giving them genuine economic freedom. And just getting involved in that story and seeing how you can meet him, meet some of the people involved. We're going to let you guys know.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Where am I?
I was asking the question from a personal perspective, the state of the nation, and going back to even before you set up this company and the idea of giving people democracy, getting them involved versus maybe being a dictator and making money for yourself.
Yeah, so I'm still loosely at the same place. Like, maybe on a personal note, maybe let me describe why I even started it. Just for 30 seconds. I'd made a bit of money before the People's Fund, right? Just not a lot, but just a little bit, right? I experienced the worst depression ever. There was an emptiness, right? And I'd spent the previous 15 years thinking that money was the thing that was going to satisfy me, right? And the thing that's become clear, even in starting the People's Fund, was no, there's an emptiness, there's a sense of meaning and purpose that you're looking for that money can't buy. So I'm eternally grateful that I tasted money young, right? In that regard. Now that I'm here and making a little bit more money, I still feel the same. Like I've bought a few creature comforts, right?
Hey.
And they're nice. Don't get it twisted. They're nice. But they get boring. Like after 2 months, you're done with them, right? What never gets boring is somebody calling, man, the platform you built, thanks. I was able to deliver my order to whoever. And I'm feeding my family. Being part of that story, like there's nothing close to that. Like there's nothing on God's green earth except God himself that could come close to that feeling, of generosity and abundance, So States of the Nation, my heart bleeds for where the country is. A lot of us are very much in me, me, me. We're all self-indulgent. We're all worried about ourselves. And rightfully so. Things are tough, but I wish a lot of us would like step out of the way and look outside and see how we can add value to someone. And in that way, we get paid. And that's the thing I want to tell all entrepreneurs. It's like, that's the trick. Don't try to get paid. Try to add value. The money comes automatically,
It comes automatically.
It comes automatically with value. Like, it's like when you change your mindset, it comes automatically. It's like when you're worried about money, it doesn't come, like you're worried about getting paid. So even how you're in giving that value is not truthful. So I'm gonna use a last analogy.
Go for it.
Right. On the first podcast we were talking about me dealing with my little gods, right? And I kept on saying that I've had these little gods forever, right? And as I'm describing it, I realized, like in that podcast, something I didn't describe very well is that I'm not doing the dealing of the little gods, right? The Holy Spirit is, right? And indulge me, Pen. Indulge me.
No, please, sir.
And what I mean by that is that as soon as I moved my attention from me trying to quit smoking or not getting in weird sexual encounters or not drinking or whatever, right? Drinking is not a really big one, right? And I focused on like reading the word, right? And praying, right? Those things happened automatically. Do you understand what I mean? So in the same way, when you focus on the right thing, right? Like when you focus on what is my, I like the B attitudes from, I think, Matthew 5-7, right? What is the highest form of being that I can be as a human,
Yeah.
right? When I focus on that, it's automatic that I get rewarded. But I'm not even looking at the reward. Do you know what I mean? So the same way, if like entrepreneurship looked at value that way instead of being self-indulgent, because we've got a lot of celebrity entrepreneurs now,
Correct.
right? And it's like,
Yo,
no.
and we know them, and shame. Some of them are really struggling financially, but they popular, boy.
Yeah, and it's like, let's move away from that. You know, how can I add value to society? I mean, I'll say this, right? From the popular entrepreneurs, I'm probably the most one of the least common, right? Least popular,
Yeah.
right? But of all the popular ones, I don't know an entrepreneur per annum, right, that's doing more turnover than the People's Fund.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I mean? And that's because TPF tries to keep focusing on the value,
Sure.
not the individual. You know,
Okay.
like even now, this thing I'm doing, Pen, if I told you I don't like doing PR, it distracts you from the work, you
I
know,
hear you.
but it's necessary. You know what I mean?
I want to speak about the analogy that you did and bring my own when you were speaking about quitting certain things, trying to just make the money and not focus on value. I thought the analogy you were going to use was macking on a girl. That single people really struggle, bro. It's almost, well, I'll speak from a man's perspective.
Yeah.
It's like girls can smell your desperation.
Smell the desperation, man.
It's very off-putting. And if you're trying to hook up a great girl, which I guess would be money in this instance as an entrepreneur, stop stressing about the girl and macking on girls. And to what you're saying about the reading of the word, etc., it's go build yourself into high value.
Yep.
Go gym, go do charity work, go meet great people. The girls will come.
Yep.
Because you're not focusing on the girl, you fucking reek of desperation. Go build yourself, and the rewards will come.
100%. Like in my previous life, I used to read books like The Game, Mystery Method, and all of that, right? And primarily what they were trying to sell is you need to do demonstration of higher value, right? And how you demonstrate higher value is either through wealth as a man, or that other women want you. No woman wants what another woman doesn't want, right?
The ladies are gonna come at you for that one.
No woman wants what another woman doesn't want. It's the nature of us, right? Even us guys, right? Think about it. Like
even us guys, you're very right. We see a girl, we see the guy that's got her. You're like, oof. I need to get to that type of paper or what.
100%. Like think about it. Like think about like some of your exes, right? That you might dislike. They're very pretty, nah?
Yeah.
You might dislike a little. And then you walk with her in the mall and you bring her to an event with your friends, and your friends are like, yo, this girl's gorgeous. You're like, man, I can put up with this insanity that she's giving me, right? Like I can put up with this. So it's the same thing. It's the same thing in that regard. And to that value thing, it's like I'm also noticing now, like in my life, like loosely, because I'm not actually interested in women, right? Like I can see their eyes, for lack of a better way of putting it, you know? And I'm building myself to be a person of value, you know? I can see the change in how we're interacting, you know. Never had a problem in that regard, but it's
let them know, boy.
But it's gotten
really
weird.
Had a problem, but
it's gotten weird, and yeah, man, it's interesting. I think 50 Cent spoke about it. Is that you measure how successful a man is by how many times he gets told no or how many times he has to say no. Basically, meaning like there's like a graph, right? If you get told no a lot of times by women, it's a demonstration of your
lack of success.
If you have to tell women no a lot of times, it's a demonstration of your success. You know, so yeah.
Your first campaign for the People's Fund, well, first three, if we can go back to those quickly, it was Tsepo Jeans, it was Walk Fresh, it was Native Nosi.
Yes.
You guys raised how much for the first? We spoke about it in the first episode and how exciting it was.
Yeah. First weekend we raised 12,000.
12,000 rand.
Like, but completely for the all three of those campaigns, I don't think it was more than 100,000.
100,000. 12,000, 100,000. Per annum currently, the People's Fund is doing how much?
Sure. We fluctuate. We drip back down to, we're doing about 70 to 80 million a year. 70
to 80 million in turnover.
Yeah. Yeah.
Luyanda, bro, I'd like to say congrats to yourself, to the team, to everyone who's involved. Happy 6 years, bro.
Thank you, man.
And I don't think we'll be alive for it when they're celebrating happy 60 years. But hopefully for the 10 years and the 20 years, we'll be here and we'll be celebrating your success. And not just us, but we're hoping that everyone who's going to be involved in whatever way, getting funded, being an employee, being an investor, is going to tell a story of, hey, I was there when this thing started.
100%.
And we can become the future African bank stories, the Maponya family type of stories, and be like, guys, we're also in the history books somehow, and we did our bit.
Yep.
And we've tried, and look, some people are happy. And now it's time to hand over to the next generation.
100%.
Congratulations to the People's Fund, and we're looking forward to more and more stories.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me. Always enjoy talking to you. I'll come back. We'll do that podcast that you and I always talk about, where we're not doing business, we're not doing anything, we're just talking like there's no audience.
Going crazy.
Yeah.
Luyanda Jafta, thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, man.